Good evening. Welcome to The Next Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we have a very special guest, Dr. Natwar Gandhi, who really turned Washington, D.C. around financially under three mayors, including former Mayor Anthony Tony Williams, and made a huge difference for the city and our nation's capital. And tonight we have him here to talk about how he did it, but also his book, Still the Promised Land. Wow. And you did. I mean, I have to tell you, as the CFO of Washington, D.C., back in the 90s under Tony Williams, you really did. We owe a lot of gratitude to what you did for the city.
Well, thank you. Very kind
A lot
of
of
you to say
gratitude.
that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I also want to suggest here that Tony Williams was our leader, a visionary leader.
He was.
And he
Absolutely.
provided
Wonderful.
Distinguished leadership, financial leadership as well.
Well, we were lucky because we got both you and Tony Williams,
Right.
both that came out of the business kind of
Right.
accounting
Right.
world that understood what it meant to
yeah.
balance the budget and to have a surplus.
Yes.
And to this day, Washington, D.C. has a surplus,
Exactly
which is
right.
phenomenal.
Yes, exactly.
And I know you say in the book, Still the Promised Land, the day you went to see, at that time, Mayor Vincent Gray, and it was, 2013, and you said to Mr. Mayor, we have a wonderful surplus of $413 million.
Right.
And by the way, here's my letter of resignation, which I loved.
Yeah, right.
So you did all the same.
Right.
You gave him a great gift, but then you just said,
Yeah.
this is my
There was
letter.
time to.
It was time. It was
to
time.
go. And it's good to go on high
High note, right, on a very high note, on a
When
very...
people say
right.
why rather than say why not.
Right, and not just because of Washington being, of course, the nation's capital, but it's the whole surrounding area.
Right.
The fact that Washington does well, the whole area does well.
Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly
So
right.
we owe a lot of gratitude to you.
Well, thank you.
I know
Thank
you've
you.
got your PhD in accounting, and
Right.
that's the whole. I want to hear about the whole story, but Still the Promised Land. It touched a chord in my heart.
Yes.
Because I know what, I look at the immigrants that have
Right.
come to the
Right.
United States,
Right.
and it's just, the stories are all just amazing. And you have a phenomenal story, given from where you came from in India,
Right.
in a small, non-paved, no water,
No.
electricity,
No. Primitive.
primitive, very primitive environment, growing up as a child.
Right.
And I remember listening, I'm reading, of course, and listening to stories about you too, but reading the book about the fact that you literally took books upstairs to the top level of the house where you were living, and rain would come in, and you had monsoon
Right,
seasons and everything.
yes.
So take me back to that your early life and what it was like, and really the barriers you had to
That's
overcome as a
right,
child.
That's right. Well, as you pointed out, Christine, it was rather primitive environment, as you pointed out. No paved street, no running water, no electricity. I still remember studying at the kerosene lamp.
Yes.
And I remember my mother and my sisters bringing water from the town river, the
Yeah.
drinking water.
Yeah.
Kind of a very small few rooms in the school's building. So it was that kind of an environment. There were no jobs. So once I finished my high school, basically it was time to leave the little town and go to Mumbai. And my father also needed some monetary help. He was running a small grocery shop that wasn't going anywhere. So I went to Mumbai, and Mumbai was a great metropolis. Actually, my transformation from that little town to Mumbai was far greater than from Mumbai to
the United
America.
States. Wow.
Because in Mumbai, you have all the modern facilities, electricity, trains, elevators, and stuff like that. But Mumbai is an extremely difficult place in terms of finding a job, finding housing, and I couldn't find any housing after having a hell of a time finding a job. I found something where I could actually sleep overnight, place where I worked, and I ate at the community kitchen.
Wow.
That's how I lived. And when I got married, I had to send my new bride to live with my parents for about 2 years.
Oh, wow. In the village?
In the village, because, and she had been in Mumbai, so for her it was even far difficult.
It was far difficult. What an
That's
adjustment.
right. And when she came back, again, we did not have housing, so basically we used to move every 3 months. It's kind of a nomadic experience, miserable. And I thought I just about had it and wanted to get out of that. Obviously everybody wants to go to America, but thinking about going to America and actually going there are two different things. You need a lot of money to go to America. So I had a friend in college who went to America. He helped me get admission, scholarship, and once that came through, I said, I'm still sorry, I cannot come because I have no money
to get the ticket.
So he was able to arrange a grant from an educational foundation. Those were the glory days of American higher education system. And so when I came, I just had $7 on me.
Wow.
$7.
All the way from Mumbai.
All the way to Mumbai and here, $7. But I studied hard, and while I was studying, I worked because I still had to support my family back in India.
And your wife was still back in India.
Right, and I had to support myself here,
Yeah, right.
in addition studying. But that was all done.
So you worked full-time, you worked while you were...
2 jobs, part-times, in the daytime, the schools. So I was busy doing all these things. It went on for a year and a half. And then I was able to bring my wife here. And I received a job. I got a job teaching at a university. And once you start teaching, you like it.
Right.
There are 3 reasons to like teaching job: June, July, and August.
Right.
You get that time free.
Right.
So, but to get into a university, a good university, to teach, you have to have a PhD.
Right.
So here I was again going back to school, and luckily I was able to get an admission at a PhD program at the Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, where I got my PhD, and then started teaching at University of Pittsburgh.
That's what, University of Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the Graduate School of Business, the MBA program. And I was there for 3 years, and then I always wanted to come to Washington. I was smitten by Washington. I had always was interested in public policy, in politics, etc. So there was a 1-year academic internship at the fellowship at the General Accounting Office, which is now the Government Accountability Office.
Right.
So at GAO, I stayed there for a year and was doing work in the area of insurance taxation, which is as arcane as you can get.
I was just saying, my God, insurance tax.
And in my life as an accountant, I've seen many complex and boring things. Insurance taxation takes the cake. Anyway, but I specialize in that, and I worked closely with House Ways and Means Committee and Senate Finance Committee, because as you know, GAO is a congressional agency, and helped reform the taxation of insurance industry. That generated close to $7 billion of additional revenue.
Oh, wow.
So at GAO, they used to call me $7 billion man. And one of the my GAO chapter has that heading, $7 billion man. And I used to audit IRS and do many stuff in the taxation area. So I had a kind of a reputation in the very limited tax policy expert area. Tony Williams, who then was the chief financial officer of Washington, D.C.
Oh, so he was that's right, he was the chief financial.
He was a CFO.
Because he also worked at Department of Agriculture.
Right,
Yeah.
before he came here. I recall in mid-90s, city was in very bad shape. It had about $535 million
yes,
of deficit in its fund balance, or so-called saving account.
Right.
And so Congress basically took away the financial powers from the mayor and the city council and put a control board in there. And within the control board structure, there was an office of the chief financial officer, and all the financial powers of mayor and the city council were vested now in the CFO.
Oh, wow.
And all the people, about 1,200 people in the city, reported to the CFO and not to the mayor and to the council.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So if you are a CFO in police department or in school system, you
reported directly.
You report to CFO, because idea was to control city's expenditures. And so at that time, city's tax system was dysfunctional, broken. People didn't pay taxes, basically, because people knew in the city that if you do not pay to the city, they will never know. So Tony Williams' first challenge was to find a tax commissioner who can fix the tax system before you do anything else.
Right.
And since I had that reputation in the limited tax policy arena, tax administration arena, he invited me to join the city. So at that time, I left GAO and went to work for the district. And he was right. City's system was thoroughly dysfunctional, broken down. And so my first challenge was to fix the tax system. How do you do that? Well, since I worked with the IRS before, auditing them.
You were auditing the IRS?
Right, in behalf of GAO.
Right.
So, and I knew most of the tax commissioners at that time as well. So I asked for their help. And at that time, many seasoned IRS tax administrators were retiring. So some of them I was able to bring to the city. But the fundamental point was, as I pointed out earlier, that citizens were not paying taxes.
Really?
So I basically said,
that's not today.
Not today. But we have a much improved tax system now.
Right.
So I went to the IRS and said, give me the list of people who are paying, city people who are paying your taxes but not our taxes. We got that. And first thing I did was to establish a telephone calling unit, about 30 people, and then started calling those people who paid IRS but didn't pay us.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant.
And said, look, you got to pay our taxes. If you do not, we will prosecute you.
Well, and they were taking deductions on their taxes?
They were not paying our taxes.
No, but I mean, on the IRS, they
no, they couldn't take
they
deduction.
Couldn't take deductions, yeah, I was going to say.
Because they didn't pay any taxes.
They didn't pay any taxes, right.
But the fundamental point was the city was left out of that money coming in.
Unbelievable.
Exactly
wow, that's
right.
a brilliant idea.
So then a very simple idea.
It's a simple, but...
Yeah, and then we realized that we need a modern tax system. We were operating out of shoeboxes in city. And I said, look, we cannot operate like this. So we basically installed a new tax system, computerized. We had to train our human resources, our people. Right. And also we had to train,
Well, everybody.
Everybody in ethics, in tax administration. And slowly but surely, we improved our tax system.
That's amazing. Dr. Gandhi, we're going to take a short break.
Please.
I hate to interrupt you because this is fascinating.
No, thank you.
We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're watching The Next Word.
You've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. You have to carefully monitor your health for the rest of your life, and you have an increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease.
Cut.
Type 2, take 2.
Action.
You've been diagnosed with a new purpose: to fight for the amazing life you made for yourself, to look that risk of heart disease square in the face and say, no, not me. You've been given a new opportunity to live. Get started at NoDiabetesByHeart.org.
Welcome back. I'm Chris Warnke, your host, and tonight we're having a conversation with Dr. Natwar Gandhi, who was the tax commissioner as well as the CFO for Washington, D.C., and truly turned the city around financially. I mean, you did, and we owe such a great deal of debt to you and to Anthony Tony Williams, our former mayor. Both of you, of course, have financial backgrounds, so we got the best and the brightest. And with the two of you, you turned the city around.
Thank you. Thank
From
you.
a total deficit to a surplus.
That's right. So when I joined the city, it had about $535 million deficit. When I left in 2013, it had $1.7 billion.
$1.7 billion, okay.
In its fund balance or in saving account.
Okay.
Today, that stands at $2.7 billion.
Yes, so we have some money.
We have some money, but more than anything else, city is financially very viable. And when we went to Wall Street in those days, dark days of control board, we were a joke.
Yes.
Today,
I know.
we are a welcome presence on Wall Street.
And you're a real model for the country.
That is true.
In fact, I was saying to people, I was going to have you on my show, and some people were saying he should come. We should put him on loan around the country to some of the cities that certainly are facing financial,
Well, when I used to
and-
testify before the Congress,
Yeah.
I remember Senator Landrieu used to say
Mary
to me,
Landrieu, who was chair of the
exactly
Appropriations
right,
Committee
exactly
on
right.
DC. Yes.
And she said, well, you seem to have done so well. You have done so well.
Why don't you come to Louisiana?
Before I go there, they say, well, why don't you walk few blocks and come to the Congress and fix the federal budget?
Right. That's right. Can you fix our federal budget? That's great.
Yeah.
So I know. I mean, so your profession, your history is just incredibly laudable. I know you've been honored, and you've now you've written the book.
Yes.
Still the Promised Land, which I love the title, because I know you appreciate what America did for you.
Right.
And it's still the Promised Land. And
It is.
My mother used to say, you know what? She came here and she said, God bless America.
Yes,
And she would say it all the time.
that is true.
And that's, I know
Yeah,
in your heart of hearts that
that is
you
true.
feel the same way.
I think that is the heart of the matter, that had I stayed in India, my life would have been wasted.
Very different, right?
By being here, this country gave me an opportunity. And it is remarkable that this country and its generous people opened their hearts and opened their doors to people like me and gave us that opportunity to remake our lives.
Right.
And in that process, we are able to contribute to this country.
Absolutely.
And if I may elaborate a little on that, Indian Americans like myself, they come here with the abundance of entrepreneurial zeal
Yes.
and professional skills. You can hardly go to an American hospital without having an Indian doctor, a university without an Indian professor.
Right.
You can hardly open a professional journal without seeing a learned article by an Indian. So I think people like me from all over the world, they basically contribute to this country. Indeed, I would say, given the history of this country, history of America is the history of immigration.
Absolutely.
And my sense here is that we do have an immigration crisis now at our southern borders, no doubt about that.
Right.
But we still need more immigrants. We need immigrants at the highest level, highest skill levels, to maintain our competitive edge. Remember when we had Y2K crisis?
Right.
We
didn't know.
yeah, we invited close to 100,000 or more Asian immigrants, skilled immigrants, Indians and others,
Really?
to solve that crisis. So we need highly skilled immigration to run our high-tech industry. Large companies
Oh, totally.
like
I mean, I know
like Google and Microsoft and Adobe and Harman, they're
right.
all run by
Amazon, yeah,
Indian
yeah, They are.
CEOs.
No, but totally.
And then we also need immigration at the low end, because who else is going to do the stoop work
Yes.
in agribusiness, in our farms, in our factories, in our slaughterhouses? We need people. And immigrants are willing to do that hard work.
And they are. Always.
The other crisis, Christian, we face is that we are an aging society now. Japan is the worst example of an aging society. Europe is getting there. Germany has a profound problems
Really, with the senior
of aging society.
Really.
China is going to face that aging crisis,
Is it?
not America, because we have immigrants with high fertility. Our minorities have higher fertility.
Right.
So as long as we have immigration here, we will not face this aging problem, because somebody has to pay for our taxes to
Right.
take care of our social services,
right.
health care.
Right.
All that needs tax-paying younger citizens, and that is what immigrants provide to us. The other thing I will point out is that as long as we have the profound economic disparity between United States and our southern neighbors at the border there and Central America, we will have immigration here. Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, those societies are unstable, profoundly unsafe.
Yes.
People want to leave those countries to come here and find some basic life that is not available to them over there.
Right.
So no matter how high a wall we build, we will have this immigration. The question is, how can we manage it in a very humane way?
Right.
So we do need immigrants here, but in a measured, in a way that can be assimilated in the country here and our needs here. So my sense here is that we will continue to have immigration no matter however we decide not to get them here, they will come here. And the question is how well we can manage them.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now, the Indian immigration, the wave was what, the 60s?
Well, it came in three waves.
Okay.
First came in 20s to build
20s?
Railroads.
Before 1924.
Right. Before, when we had, and they were
Immigration.
also employed in the agribusiness in California.
That's right.
And
so they were in the railroads.
right. And
I
then,
did not realize that.
and then came, the second wave came in mid-60s
Right, in
after
the mid-60s.
liberalization.
Right, after liberalization. Right.
And they came, professional Indians came.
Right.
And the next wave came when we had this crisis in our Y2K, and we needed more people here.
Right.
So they came into these waves.
Right.
But right now, that immigration is somewhat moderated because we are putting more and more restrictions of that immigration here. But if we do that, that would be our loss. That would be our loss.
Yes.
So we should invite more skilled immigrants here. I do understand, the nervousness about immigrants coming here because we had the impact of globalization, where in the Rust Belts, people lost their jobs, their livelihoods, their established life.
And long-term established life.
Right, right. So obviously, immigrants can be blamed for it.
Right.
But I don't think blaming immigrants helped, because immigrants are not the cause of their problems. It's the globalization, it's the automation, it's the imports and all that creates that. And we have to find a way to bring them back into the normal lifestyle by giving them job training, providing them safety net. But that has nothing to do with the immigration. Immigration is the way out of that.
Right. No, absolutely.
Right.
So when you left your wife in India, when you came here,
Right.
she was still in India
Right.
with your family.
Right.
And the village life is very difficult.
Very
I mean,
difficult,
to get water, you mentioned your mother and sisters were
and-
getting water.
yes.
You had to, they had to walk, miles in some
Yes.
instances.
Yes.
Through, I mean,
Yeah.
a number of perilous.
Right.
situations.
Right.
So she was there, and then you brought her over.
Right.
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 And then you made your home at the University of Pittsburgh for.
Right, for 3 years.
For 3 years.
And then
Right.
came here in 1977.
Oh, in 1977.
Seven.
Okay.
And I came here for just about a year to
Right.
do research.
Right.
But like all people who come to Washington, I had
We
this
love it.
Potomac fever.
Right, and you didn't want to leave.
Illusion of doing important
Right,
things.
right.
And luckily, GAO provided me that home.
Right.
And after that, Washington, D.C. provided
your
me
home.
that home,
Right, which is
where I
great.
could do my very significant professional work
Right.
from personal perspective.
Which was wonderful, and from there you then went on to become the tax commissioner and the CFO
Right, right.
under Tony, and then Adrian Fenty,
Right.
Mayor Adrian Fenty,
And then
of
Mayor
course
Gray.
Mayor Gray.
Right.
And then
right,
you decided, after you got it up and working, and revenues and
Yes.
a surplus, and
Yeah.
the city's wonderful.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's,
yeah.
it's
I think
the best.
the structure of control board
Yes.
worked very well.
It did work well. It did work well. And I remember at the time.
Mayors were very helpful
Yes,
as well.
yes.
Right. And city
Yes.
council as well. Yeah.
And the mayors outside of just Washington, I would think you probably relied on as well.
Right.
Correct? Just to
Right.
see best practices and to
Right,
see,
right, right. Yes.
what worked and what didn't work. And the control board did work well.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it did.
Absolutely.
It was a good period. And also we worked well with a very bipartisan Congress.
Oh, absolutely right.
And
Actually,
you
I
had-
got along very well with the Republicans on the Hill,
Yes,
as well as the
Democrats, yeah.
because they all could see the importance of a
what you-
financially
yes,
viable
yes,
city.
right.
And they basically
nation's capital,
said
yeah.
to CFO, look, we look to you to make sure
Yeah.
the city remains financially viable. The day I would show the deficit on the Hill, that I have a deficit here,
Right.
I would be out of job.
You'd be out of job. Right.
Yeah. So it was a great incentive to make sure that there is no
Right.
deficit. There is no deficit.
Right.
But
Yeah,
city,
that's great.
and I must say the Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, were very much willing to help
Yes.
to make sure the city remains financially viable and
we're
healthy.
very lucky. And we're very lucky as residents, and we're very lucky as the whole metropolitan area.
Right.
Because if we did well in nation's capital, we're going to do well.
Yeah.
throughout
And
the whole
city
region,
now
yeah.
is a city. It's a hip city. People
It is a hip city.
People want to come. Every
Oh, I know.
month we are adding
I
about
know.
1,200 new people to the city.
At
net.
least, right?
At least.
At least.
So,
Yes.
so we are basically a attractive place now because of the
It's a very
restaurants and
Well, it's the
theaters and
intellectual
museums, monuments.
appeal and the
It's-
culture. And
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
and the restaurants and the neighborhoods.
It's a new city now.
It's a new city.
Yeah.
It's totally different from the 1970s.
Oh,
or the 19, yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Well, thank you. And thank you for, being and doing what you did. And good luck on your book.
Thank
And
you.
we still are in our promised land.
Yes,
And I love the title.
very kind of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this
And
opportunity.
come back. Okay, come back.
Very kind of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Warnke. You've been watching The Next Word. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.